we can start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our event. My name is İlayda, and I'm going to be today's moderator. Tonight, we come together to take a closer look at one of the world's endangered languages, Hemşince. Language is not merely a tool for communication. It is culture, history, and identity. The loss of a language is not just the disappearance of words, but the erasure of people's memory, their way of life, and their unique way of understanding the world. This evening, we'll be hearing from Sonnur Karaibrahimoğlu, a third-year student from Mersin University, who will share her presentation titled Sociolinguistic Dynamics and Lexical Insights of the Endangered Hamshen Language. We thank her in advance and hope you all enjoy this insightful and meaningful session. Please note that we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation, so feel free to note them down as we go. Thank you. And now I give the mic back to my dear friend Sonnur.
Thank you, İlayda, for giving the word to me. So, hello everyone and welcome to our meeting. My name is Sonnur Karaibrahimoğlu. I'm currently studying my third year in Mersin University's English Linguistics program. So my presentation topic is about an endangered language spoken in the Black Sea region called Hamshen Language. So I'll be introducing Hamshen language from both a sociolinguistic review of literature and a lexical view from my own non-prototypical linguistic fieldwork data. But before I continue with the details of my contents page, I want to give my special thanks to the Society of Linguistics of Mersin University for giving me this opportunity to share my findings about this language with you. And I also want to thank my professor, Filiz Çetintaş Yıldırım, because she's been consulting me throughout this journey. So let's begin. So to summarize my work, I split my contents into two components. The first half will be about a sociolinguistic insight on the language, such as the Hamshen language's acceptance of identity among Hamshenians, sociopolitical events in Hamshen history, and some Armenianisms within the Hamshen's culture, such as vartevor. And then we're going to move on to some etymology of names of Hamshen's villages, as well as some Armenian-rooted lexemes in Hamshen language, and then some origins of nouns in this language, such as other word origins and Turkish cognates. Then we're going to move on to the other half, the other part of my contents, which will include my own non-prototypical linguistic fieldworks data that I've brought for a linguistic insight on this language. And I will be sharing some of my own data that I've collected about this language from the field. And some of these will be noun pluralities, such as regular, root changing, and exceptional. And then we're going to look up on some case structures of nouns. And then I will mention a topic where it's about a cultural effect on a morpheme's type in this language. Then we're going to conclude with a verb list and adjectives and adverbs from this language. So language is a living phenomena of human nature. Societal events such as migration, politics, trades, deportation, and war can be the cause of a language's birth, vitality, and death. The Hamshen, they call themselves Hemşince'nin, and this language is known to be emerged in the higher mountains of the province Artvin, where the northeastern Black Sea region of Turkey and western Armenia is closer. So Hamshen language is a consequence of two different people of ethnicity living long together enough to create a mixed language. So Hamshen's language's ethnic background is half Turkish and half Armenian, both culturally and linguistically. For the geographical background, the Hamshens within the borders of Turkey, which is the concern of my study, are known to reside today in Hopa, Kemalpaşa, Ardala, and some other villages in Artvin, and another group who migrated to Rize, but they long have been forgotten their language, although they're ethnically still Hamshens, and these people reside in Çayeli and Çaylı Hemşin, Çamlı Hemşin in Rize province. And today, it is known that the Hamshen language is still thriving in Artvin, and it is spoken in the households of families who migrated to western provinces of Turkey, known as Düzce, Yalova, Istanbul, Bursa, and Sakarya in the late 2000s. So this language is still spoken in those regions, in households as well. And lastly, for the endangerment of Hamshen language, UNESCO in 2010 identified this language as potentially vulnerable because of the reason that this language has not been passed through newer generations, and consequently, it is the main reason why I wanted to study this language, because the Hamshen language has always stayed in the shadows of some other languages in the same area. As you may not know, the Black Sea region is full of different ethnicities and full of culture. So there's a lots of other minority languages, such as the Laz, Gürcü, or some other ethnicities, as well as Hamshen. And Hamshen language has a huge linguistic gap when looked upon some Laz language studies. So now let's move on to how native speakers of Hamshen language see their own language. So being a fusion of Armenian and Turkish culture, Hamshensi people have a socio-political and ethno-social conflict, even within their own communities, about their identity. So it means that some part of Hamshen speakers truly embody their Armenian ethnic background, while some of them fully embrace their own their Turkish side. But of course, there is some Hamshens that also accept themselves as Hamshens. So according to Gülay Akın in 2023, she says that the true identity should be Hamshensi, that is Hamshen, and this really supports would support a linguistics perspective, because Hamshen is a mixed language. Hamshen is not a dialect of Turkish, it is not a dialect of Armenian, so they should be identified as Hamshens. And for some socio-political events that caused this language, that pushed this language into being isolated, and for this language to go under endangerment, here are two events in its history. That the first one was the deportation. So minority of Hamshens that were living in Georgia, which some parts of Georgia was a part of the Ottoman Empire back then. So there were Hamshens living in that area as well, not only in Turkey. So these people, so this big deportation was also known as Ahıska sürgünü, and Hamshen people were also deported with them. So in the year of 1944, Hamshen people that live in Georgia were deported to Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan by the Soviet Union, led by Stalin. And although it is known that most of those Hamshens returned back to Republic of Turkey, but there's also a community today. There's also a community of Hamshenians that still live in those countries. But for the state of this language, how it's spoken now in those countries is not a concern of my study, but I would like to know. On the Turkey sides, what pushed the Hamshen language to isolation was the Laz and the Turks, some racist acts of banishing them from the seaside of the Artvin province known as Hopa to higher mountains of the area. They pushed Hamshen people to build their own villages on the higher mountains. But of course, this situation was solved after the late 90s to early 2000s. And now in today, of course, there are some Hamshens that no longer live in the villages, in the higher mountain area. They moved to Hopa, they bought their residences, they bought their houses. They're living in peace at the moment, the Laz and the Hamshen. And here is some notes from Swerdlow's work in study in 2003. So he asked a 69-year-old woman he met at the Hamshen wedding about her memories of the deportation, and she cried, "We were deported to Kyrgyzstan when I was 11 years old. 4 of my brothers starved. During the journey, we left everything, all our cattle, our farms and everything." So this is a really saddening truth about some minority of languages that are culturally heritaged through generations, because they're so languages basically are like a mirror that reflects societies. So what a community has went through in history really reflects on languages. It pushes the languages to isolation. So Hamshen's history begins in here. But although regardless of many hardships that this culture has went through the history, some Armenianisms still thrive in this language and its culture. And some of these, and the most significant one would be Vartevor, which is a festivity that is celebrated around the beginning of summer in like June. So in Blessing's definition, Vartevor also shows correlation that this festival has Armenian roots, still celebrated in Hamshen culture, by showing the etymological tracing of the word itself. So when you trace the word Vartivor, which is the Armenian name of this festivity, but the Hamshen people calls it Vartevor. So this, when you follow this word back into etymology, you see that it's a compound word. So there's a word in standard Armenian dialect known as Vart, meaning rose, and Varte, va. The va part also can be etymologically traced back to the word root to burn in Armenian. So basically this festivity means Feast of Roses and the burning of fire. And this is celebrated among Hamshen people, but it is today no longer celebrated in Armenia, because so according to Injajikan in 1990, so Vartavash was traced that the festivity of Vartivor was actually brought to Armenia by a pagan festivity. So it was replaced by the church, because as you might know, the Armenians are Orthodox Christians. So their church actually denied this celebrity because it was brought from paganism. But although Armenians do not celebrate this festivity now, it is still celebrated in Hamshen culture, but the people would probably wouldn't know that was brought from paganism, which is really interesting to me. Let's continue with some more Armenianisms we can find in this language. And some of these would be etymology of Hamshen's villages where they reside in. So some of these would be Mejovit. Mejovit is a place, a resident where the Hamshens stayed. But today this name is changed with a more Turkish name, of course, this village's name. But the Hamshen people, but the native speakers in that area still call their village Mejovit. And when you follow this word, you notice that. So in most of the Hamshen villages names named by the native speakers are actually toponyms, which means all of these villages names are related to nature. So they're basically actually defining their environment of their villages in Armenian rooted words. But I don't actually know if the native speakers are really aware of it. But when you follow the word Mejovit into its components, you see that in Western Armenian dialect, there's the word mesh. And then when you follow it further into Standard Armenian dialect, you see that there's a word mech, meaning large. And then the suffix, Armenian rooted suffix ovit or hovit, meaning valley or plateau. So they're basically defining their own village in Armenian rooted words, calling it along a large and straight plateau you see in the name. And then we have another example, Mehvor. So Mehvor village is today called Yukarı Şimşirli. Its current name in Turkey is Yukarı Şimşirli, but the natives still call it Mehvor. So when you follow this word into its etymological background, you see that there's a word in standard Armenian dialect, mel, meaning honey, and then the suffix avor, meaning bearing or producing. So there again, it's a toponym of compound word in this village. So Mehvor means the village which produces honey. And then here is the last. So these two examples, Mejovit and Mehvor, were from Blessings in 2006 study. But I wanted to add one more village that I personally know that its name has been changed to Çimenli, which is more a Turkish name at the moment. But the native speakers still call it Ardala. And so the reason why I know this is because Ardala is the village, is the Hamshen village that I collected my non-prototypical linguistic data from in the last summer in chai harvesting area timeline. So it is my mother's village. And when I was in the field as a linguist, no native speaker in that village called their village the current name Çimenli. They always referred it with Ardala. And the Hamshenians that live in that village were also referred as Atölyesi. So from my childhood, as I remember, my father, both my parents are also Hamshens, but my mom is from this village, Ardala, and then my dad is from another Hamshen residence called as Kemal Pasha. So my dad always made fun of my mother saying Atölyesi, meaning that she's from a Hamshen village that's from Ardala. And when I asked him the reason why he makes fun of Hamshens that live in Ardala, he said that it's because so Hamshen people converted from Orthodox Christianity to Islam, but it didn't happen at once. So it was more like a progressive conversion of religion. So each Hamshen residences and each Hamshen communities in different villages, they progressively embraced Islam. And Ardala was known to convert to Islam beforehand of many other villages. So that's why my dad made fun of my mom saying that she's Atölyesi. And for some other etymology of Armenian-rooted lexemes in Hamshen, I've gathered some examples from Blessings 2006 study. So when you follow an Armenian-rooted word in Hamshen in general, you always stumble upon the Western Armenian dialect first. So that's the case, what happened with me when I searched the etymologies of words in Hamshen. I always found out that there's a copied word in the same or slightly changed exact form in Western Armenian dialect in the word of words in Hamshen. So when you follow it deep further into Armenian, you see that there's a more unrecognizable kind of form of the same word in standard Armenian. So with these some examples, I followed their etymology for you from Blessings study. So there's a word gudech. So gudech means the small heaps in which the hay is put after harvest. And the Hamshen language has many lexemes, morphemes from Armenian that are associated with nature, because this language basically has no written form. It is a spoken language, and it is so most of the words in this language are related to nature and village life. So gudech is a small heap, and when you follow this word's etymology in Western Armenian, you see that there's a quite similar form of this word, meaning gudoch, which is meant the same thing again. And then in Standard Armenian, you see that there's a word kutoch, which is more different than Western Armenian, and it means heaps. And then for second examples from blessings, we have the word hurch. So this researcher Blessing took this word as an example for lexemes that are rooted from Armenian. But I personally, as a Hamshen researcher, I wouldn't say that this word can be specifically borrowed from Armenian, because we also have this word in Turkish, hurch, which is like the bundle which you put clothes in. But I do think that this word exists in many Middle Eastern societies, their languages. So, but this researcher Blessing, according to him, this word was derived from Armenian. So let's go with that. It says, when you follow this word into Western Armenian, there's a word called hurch, meaning bundle again, and then we have Standard Armenian version hurjun. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but it also means hay bundle. And then lastly, we have dandigin. Dandigin means housewife. In Western Armenian, you see it's not even changed into Hamshen. It is directly copied into the language from Western Armenian due to their geographical relations. So you see the word dandigin, and then Standard Armenian, there's tantikin. So from now on in this presentation, the words will be part of my own study, my non-prototypical linguistic fieldwork study that I collected, that I've gathered in the field in Artvin's, Ardala, and Kemalpaşa regions. So let's see some origins of nouns that I've gathered for you. First, we have two words that are derived into Hamshen language from Armenian. We see the word gadu. So gadu means cat. And for plural form, you see that this word takes the shape of gadunie or gadvenie. So both of the forms are used commonly, as I've heard from my native speakers that I collected my data from. So in Western Armenian, there's the same exact word, meaning cat again, gadu. And then in Standard Armenian, there's katu, meaning cat again. And then we have Vartevor. As I previously mentioned, this is a cultural festivity that is brought from Armenian culture to Hamshen, which is brought from paganism into Armenian, but then the church denied this festivity for the reason that it was brought from paganism. So when you follow this word into Vartavar, in Standard Armenian, you can split its components into meaningful Armenian-rooted word roots, meaning vart, rose, and va, to burn. And then for Turkish, of course, it's a mixed language, so there is a lot of Turkish lexemes as well. So one of these, the most interesting one I stumbled upon my own data was Olusha. So Olusha, so as most of our meetings, the people here are Turkish native speakers, I wonder if this word sounds similar to you, because I personally am ethnically Hamshen, but I do not speak the language, unfortunately. But when I heard this word first, I thought it was from Armenian derived, but seems it's Turkish actually. So Olusha is a compound word from Turkish. So the first component is ol, meaning son, and then ushak, which is kind of untranslatable for me. It's but both of these components in Turkish are kinship terms that are inherently plural, and they're inherently masculine. So both of these components are inherently masculine, but Hamshen derives these both roots from Turkish, and then compounds it into a lexeme, which is gender neutral, meaning family. So Olusha is quite interesting lexeme formation I've found out from my data in Hamshen language. And then lastly, we have chai, but of course, this is not a Turkish word. Originally, it is also used in many other languages in Middle East and Far East. So tea, chai, is chai in Hamshen as well, but they pluralize it with iye, which is the Armenian suffix, which I will explain its regularity in later pages. And let's continue. And of course, the Hamshen language, Hamshen languages, parent languages are Turkish and Armenian, but of course, as any other language, it is also it also derives some other lexemes from some surrounding people. So as you might know, Black Sea region has a very rich cultural diversity. There are Hamshens, there are Georgians, there are Laz, there are Turks, and many more. So Hamshen language, from my own data that I found out, that was not derived from either Armenian or Turkish. I wondered where did this language got this word from, lobia. So lobia is a word in Hamshen meaning bean, and it's a mass noun. So its plural form is also lobia. And I figured that it was either probably derived from Laz or Georgian language, because although this lobia might exist in some other languages, the closest neighboring languages to Hamshen are Laz and Georgian that have the same exact lexeme. So Hamshen probably got this word through language contact with the Laz or Georgian people. And let's see some of the Turkish cognates that I've gathered last year with my consultant teacher, my professor Nuria Özer, last year. So these are a list of Turkish cognates that I found out in my own data. So some of these would be meyva, meaning fruit, kitap, meaning book, maktap, meaning school, defter, mobilya, aksesuar, baba, bebek, oluşa, pa, yatak, çay, dahtak, koltuk. So these words are estimated to derived from Turkish into Hamshen, as none of these words exist in its second parenting language, Armenian. So although most of these words are not originally Turkish, some of these words are derived into Turkish from other languages, such as Persian or Arabic. But Turkish derived this language from, transferred these lexemes from Turkish to Hamshen. So, but they're slightly, you can notice that these these lexemes that also exist in Turkish are pronounced in northeastern Karadeniz ağzı dialect, Turkish dialect, into Hamshen, because so the Hamshen people are also bilinguals that speak the Karadeniz ağzı. But also one of the findings that I need larger data in the future, but I do want to find out. So that is, so as you know, Hamshen language has two parenting languages, Armenian and Turkish, but one of these languages are probably the lexifier language, while the other is the matrix. So I would like to evaluate some more data in the future about Hamshen language to find out this matter. So I wanted to share this with you. And let's move on to some word categories. We're going to start off with some nouns that I've collected in the field. And I categorized my nouns into 3 types in showing plurality in this language to get a better understanding of how this language functions. So basically we have some nouns. The first one is dans, meaning peer, in Hamshen, and in plural form it takes the suffix iye, and then it becomes danziye. There's also a phonological change. The S sound becomes z, when pluralized. And then we have the word ots. It becomes otsiye from ots, huziye from huz, meyvaniye from meyva, paniye from pa. So as you can see, the half of these 5 nouns that I've brought for you are derived from Armenian, while the last 2, fourth and fifth ones are from Turkish. You see that these words are derived from Turkish, meyva and pa. So again, the word para in Turkish is copied into Hamshen with changing its dialect in northeastern Turkish dialect, the Karadeniz ağzı. It's pronounced as pa instead of para, but when they pluralize it, it takes the suffix iye. So when I evaluated my data of nouns in their pluralization forms, I noticed that 30 of the 50 nouns that I collected were pluralized with either one of these 2 allomorph suffixes, iye or niye. So it is quite possible to assume that iye or niye suffix is the in prescriptive definitions. Of course, it would be the regular form of pluralization in this language. So you also see other examples, otsiye, huziye, meyvaniye. And you can see that Hamshen language applies this pluralization form that is regular onto both Armenian-derived words and into Turkish-derived words as well. And the second categorization would be that I noticed in my data was nouns that changed its root, probably assuming that they changed their roots according to some phonological environments. But that is not a concern of my study yet, of course, but I would like to study that in the future about this language, as there's lots of linguistic gaps in this language, Hamshen. But I brought some examples in my data that I've noticed that the roots changed when they took this regular pluralization form, iye or niye suffix. One of these examples would be dun, meaning house, becomes deniye, and then ahbar, meaning brother, becomes ahberniye, which means brothers. And then we have tur, which means door, which can be used in phrases like turepats, turehepa, open the door or close the door. And this word becomes almost completely unrecognizable. It takes the shape of tervike when pluralized. And there is a third allomorph to this suffixation that I found out in my data. So niye, iye, and then here in this tur, in this 8th example, we see that ike also comes in. But of course, more data must be evaluated in order to see if the word tur is just some exception, or is it also an allomorph in this language, in this pluralization marking. So, and then we have lazut, which is, as far as I know, also derived from Laz language, meaning corn, becomes lazdeniye. So its root changes. It becomes from lazut to lazde. And then we have lastly the word meaning horse, which is tsi, and it becomes tsianiye. So it is also like its root changes when taking this pluralization marking. And for the third and last categorization that I've made in nouns, in pluralization of nouns, we see some exceptional pluralities, which are usually in pluralized form. Half of these words stay in their singular forms, do not take another shape, or they become almost completely unrecognizable. So some of these would be yema. The word yema means mother in Hamshen language, but in pluralized form, it becomes almost unrecognizable. It becomes Maria. But of course, for certain, all linguists would know that nothing in a language happens, everything in a language happens for a reason. So this might have a reason to become Maria in pluralized form that is etymological about this language, or cultural even. And then we have the word gaisho. So I want to explain this word. So in most of the Black Sea regions, traditions and cultures, there's a meal that is made from cabbage, and it's in the form of a soup. So the Laz people also have this traditional food in their cabbage soups. But the difference between the Hamshen's cabbage soup and the Laz people's cabbage soup is that the Laz people add rice into the cabbage soup, but the Hamshen people don't add rice. They add beans or kidney beans instead. So there's a slight difference between them, but it's a cultural thing. And its name, the name Hamshen language put for this meal is gaisho. And gaisho stays in its singular form in pluralized form as well. And then we have the word hats, meaning bread, which is also actually in this language. This word meaning bread is also used for the general noun meaning meal or food. So I think there's a cultural significance about within Hamshen's culture that they really think that hot bread is something that is very special, that is really important in their culture, that they relate it with being full, having been eaten, or having meal. So this is also a sociolinguistic thing that reflected into language, into their language. And then we have the noun pan, which is the noun form, like work. It stays in its singular form again in pluralized form. And then we have mahre. Mahre means firewood. And then we have lastly abur, which is also a cabbage food, but it's not soup. It's more consistent. So it's a meal that is not watered down. It's a food, and they call it abur. And this word, the noun for it, also stays in its singular form in pluralized form as well. And let's move on to some case structures in this language from my data. So we have the noun dun, meaning home. In this language, we can see that this noun is inflected into dunus in dative form, done in locative form, and donan in ablative form, such as in the sentences that I've given examples of. Dunus gertam, I'm going home. Done nestazim, I'm sitting at home. Donanela, I'm out of home. And then in genitive case, we see the noun gadu, meaning cat. It becomes gadun in inflected form. And in genitive, actually, in my data, I've stumbled upon 3 types of genitive inflection in this language. And I wanted to show you in different phrases. So for gadu, becoming gadun, we see Ayşe'in gadun şat anuşa. In shun, which means dog, we see that it becomes Alin shune şat anuşa, which means Ali's dog is cute, very cute. Ayşe's cat is very cute. And then half means chicken. And sirmain have şat anuşa. In Turkish, Sırmanın tavuğu çok tatlıdır. Takes the affix e or n. So there's 3 types of genitive inflection I've find out in my own data so far. And for nominative, we see that again the word dog, shune hachagu. The dog is barking. It takes the e suffix again. So in many of these case suffixations, inflections have similar forms. They're taking very similar, almost unidentifiable suffixes. So further data must be analyzed. And we see that in locative case, suffixation in Hamshen, meaning at, which adds up the meaning of at into the phrase. We see that Hamshen's suffix inflected form in locative case is almost identical to Turkish. which is in Turkish we say de, evde, and then they say done. Moving on to some cultural effects on morpheme type is one thing I wanted to mention about this language that I found out in my own data, and I find it very interesting about this language. I wanted to share it with you. So I noticed that the Hamshen people estimatingly converted from Orthodox Christianity to Islam, estimatingly 300 years ago, as I've heard from my native speakers. So they copied this word Allah into the language, into the Hamshen language from Turkish when they become Muslims. So the already existing word in Hamshen language meaning God, or the generic meaning for the one who creates, aspats. So this word aspats has changed its morpheme type. So this cultural shift of religion really reflected onto their language as in morpheme type, which is, I think, a really important linguistic find about this language that I wanted to share with you, because I've noticed this within my own native speakers. So this word aspats, when you follow its etymology into Armenian, you see that there's the same exact word meaning God, aspats, in standard Armenian. So as a result, the word aspats became used as both a free and a bound morpheme after the copying the word Allah from Islam, from the Islamization of Hamshens. So the Hamshen people began to use this word aspats not as frequent as Allah, due to their religious shift from Orthodox Christianity to Islam. So they began to use this word in bound morphemes, in bound situations, such as phrases such as kaspaze terchim. So it means God damn it. And Hamshen people use it more frequent than this word in free state of being. In aspats, they use, when you ask a native speaker in Hamshen language what is the meaning of God, they usually say Allah, but they also use this word aspats in phrases like this. And when you break this down into its components, you see that this word is a compound phrase as well. So kaspatse, when you split it, you see that there's a prefix ka, which is a way of, in this language, is also a free morpheme. Ka by itself is usually used to express, is an expression of calling out to women, like ka. And for males, there's this morpheme da, ka or da. So this is actually a phrase which takes two generally free morphemes, and it makes it bound. And then we have kaspatse. And I do think that this, for the future of Hamshen language, this word aspats might become even fully bound as within 2 or more decades, estimatingly. So I do think that linguists and some other writers of Hamshen language might want to take this word and use it instead of Allah more. But of course, this is a natural phenomena. So a linguist can't really interrupt it. But what we can do for this language, for the best of it, we can document this word. And for the verb lists in this language, I have some 6 of some verbs from my verb list of 30, I think. I've gathered a lot of data. And so we have the verb gen, which means generally to do in Hamshen language. So they say in sentences such as bostanin pangenik. In Turkish, it means bahçede iş yapıyoruz. So the verb in English is to do, and its agreement marking of personal inflection seems to be the ik suffix in this language. So gen becomes genik in first person plural form, person agreement. And then we have the verb kezi hazgenim, So hazge means to love in this language. Kezi hazgenim means seni seviyorum in Hamshen language. And its person agreement in first person singular is im, which is generally evaluated as I've so far seen in this language is a person agreement in this language for first person singular im. And then we have gerta, which means to go. And in the example, I'm sorry, in the example, andi hedef ertog. So andi hedef basically means and then. It's a conjunction in this language. Andi hedef, and then. It means ertog, to go. Ondan sonra gideceğiz. So its person agreement is uk this time, but in plural. But we see that. So the person agreements in this language can vary to different verbs as any other language. We see for first person plural so far, we have seen the allomorphs ik and uk for this language, while the first personal singular is im. And then we have kaş, ina sehpa kaşegus. O sehpayı çekiyor, to pull. And then for second person singular, we see the person agreement gus suffix, kaşegus, kaşegus. And then there's a buffer sound, which is g, is inserted within two components, within two morphemes. And then we have the verb ha, horon haguni, yakantop haguni. So this verb actually means both to dance and to play. And when I first stumbled upon this data in my voice recordings, I had to check it again because I thought that I made a mistake in recordings. But when I asked my consultant, Aylin Köse, thanks to her for translating all my data, she's a native speaker, and she said that this verb applies for both in phrases such as horon oynuyoruz and yakantop oynuyoruz. So in first person plural, my person agreement, we see that it takes the suffix uni, haguni, and then there's a buffer consonant g sound within. And lastly, we have the verb nest, which means to sit. And in phrases, you can use this word as yes nestigum. I'm sitting. So, but in this example, I could not identify which morpheme in this sentence shows the person agreement. So we see no person agreement in this verb, which is quite interesting. So I do think that this might be because maybe of some forgotten older forms in this language, which can be cultural as well. And lastly, I want to mention one thing. So if you ever meet a Hamshetsi person, excuse me, when you ask them for a verb, like when you ask them, for example, what does to play, to love mean? They usually affixated their verbs with the suffix ush, which is that's the meaning of infinite marking, such as in Turkish makmek, to do, you know. So there is an equivalent of it, infinite marking in Hamshen as well, and they use it. They usually affixate verbs with ush, such as in haush, sergush, gertush, genush, and many more. And another interesting thing that I noticed in my data and in my native speakers was Hamshen people double the verbs in some situations, which is, of course, again, seen in many languages of minority heritage languages, such as in Kurdish and many other languages that I might not know. So in Hamshen, I did find two phrases in my voice recordings that can be given as an example for double verbing in this language. For example, we have but I did notice that double verbing made in Hamshen is usually when they use a verb that is derived directly, that is copied into Hamshen from Turkish. They double it in verbing, in phrases, such as the verb they copied from Turkish geçin, to get along, meaning, and they use it in sentences such as soy geçilmiş ak, we get along good, and they double the verb. And another example would be the verb taken from derived from Turkish, which is besle, which means to feed, which is the same exact meaning in Turkish as well. And they use this verb in sentences such as Aner beslemiş geniku, we were feeding them. So gen, as we've seen in the verb list in the previous page, gen means to do. So, and then they use in the sentence beslemek, and then they say geniku, and then the iku is probably the post marking in this language, which is the aspect marking. So Aner beslemiş geniku, we were feeding them. They're basically saying we were feeding them, you know. And this is actually a specialty in that is double verbing is common in many languages that are spoken by bilingual communities, and Hamshen people are also bilingual communities, so they double verb in some situations to intensify or with the innate feeling of them not quite expressing themselves, I would assume, which is a cultural thing again. And I want to talk about this table of personal inflection that I've created. This table from my data. I basically gathered some of the most basic verbs in this language to see how personal inflection, how personal markings are made in this language. So some of the basic verbs in this language that I gathered for you are gasa. Gasa means to tell, hazge, to love, sergen, to see, gerta, to go, kash, to pull. And for first personal singular, we see that these verbs take the form, three allomorphs of the same personal inflection. Yes gasim, kezi hazgenim, yes sergenim, yes gertam, yes sehan kashigum. So we see im, am, and these are three allomorphs of the same personal inflection marking. And then we have you, second person singular. We have for gasa, tun gases, tun inzi hazgenes, tun sergenes, tun gertas, tun sehba kashegus. So I'm pulling the table in Kash. So in second person singular, it takes either s, ss, and as or us. So three allomorphs again. And then for he, she, it, of course, the Hamshen language doesn't have a gender distinction in third personal point of view in singular form. So it is quite similar in this form to its parent language, Turkish, which also doesn't have a gender distinction. So Hamshen language generally doesn't have a gender distinction that is too inserting in some ways. So except for some kinship terms, which is quite natural to be inherently genitive distinctive. But in he, she, or it, we see that this language modifies verbs such as in ina gasa, ina kezi hazgena, ina sergeneta, ina gerta, ina sehpa kashagu. So we see some different variations of personal inflection for he, she, or it. It doesn't have a gender distinction, but we do see some different forms, and which means that there's still a linguistic gap on this table. So I can study more and gather more data about this to truly complete this table that I've created. Because personally, I wouldn't say that this would apply to every single verb in this language, but I did wanted to gather some of these basic verbs in order to show you how this language makes personal inflection. And then we have for we have mek gasik, we have mek kezi hazgenik, mek mek sergenek, mek gertak, and mek sehpan kaşiguk. We see some variations here again, such as ik, ek, ak, and uk, which is quite a lot of allomorphs for one morpheme. The personal inflection for we, and then for you in plural, in second person plural, we have tung gasek, tung ingzi hazgenek, and then tung sergenek, tung gertak, tung sehpan kaşeguk. And then for they, we have iner gasin, iner kezi hazgenin, iner sergenin, iner gertan, iner sehpan kaşigun. And in Hamshen language, there's also another thing that I want to mention. The verb hazge, to love, takes a buffer consonant, the sound n, when this word root is followed by a vowel initial suffix that I've noticed in my data, and such as in the first person plural form hazge, hazgeim, it becomes hazgenim, so it takes a buffer consonant n. I keep doing this. And the verb hazge also takes the form haze, which makes deletion of the sound, the velar sound g, in negated form. So, for instance, when you say tung inzi hazene çek, which means you don't love me, in third person plural form, in negated form. For hazgenim, you say. So it makes deletion of a sound. And then we have hazge has become haze, deleting the velar g sound. That was the last thing that I wanted to mention. And let's move on to some other word categories from my data I brought for you, and these are some adjectives at first. So we have some common adjectives from this language, which are errant. So the word errant, which means both handsome and beautiful, is a gender-neutral adjective that is used for both men and women. For example, errant mart, beautiful man, or errant genik, beautiful woman. And we have the adjective bitzik, such as, for example, as we know from Mahir Özkan's book translation into Hamshen, which is a literacy thing that is that contributes to the preservation of this language. She translates this word into bitzik. So bitzik means little, as in bitzik prens. And then we have shash, which is a common adjective in Hamshen. We see, for example, shashkadu, stupid cat. And then we have some color adjectives, such as jarmak. So jarmak means white, as in jarmakdum, White House. And then we have garmi. So garmi kurba. Garmi kurba means red sock. So I think it's really catchy, garmi kurba. And then we have rekvor. Rekvor means brilliant, but Hamshen language also has the copy word from Turkish akilli. The origin of this adjective in Turkish is akıllı, but then of course they apply their own Turkish northeastern dialects known as Karadenizası, and they say akilli instead of akıllı, which I've heard from my grandmother a lot. Akilli ol, they say, or gekvor, as in gekvor talebe. And then we have a numeral adjective, which means two. When I asked one of my native speakers how many granddaughters you have, she said two. So she used egu. So egu adik torunuyum, meaning I have two granddaughters. And also you see the noun torun is also derived from Turkish into this language again. And then we have kiçme. So kiçme tereyağı, a little, So these were some of the adjectives that I brought for you. And lastly, I have some listing of adverbs in this language. So for Hamshen, there's one thing, one specialty of this language that I want to mention is that Hamshen makes a lexeme formation process that is quite similar, that can be also found in one of its parenting languages, Turkish. So Turkish makes full reduplication to create new morphemes and new lexemes from adjectives to adverbs. And Hamshen also has this specialty. And we see in some examples, which are shash means stupidly. So Hamshen language fully reduplicates this adjective shash, making it shash, and it means stupidly now as in adverb. In phrases such as tunalaman şaşaş gabremi, oh, you don't speak stupidly, something like that. And then we have mani, himi. So mani means fastly, but I do not know if the non-reduplicated form money is used in this language. I haven't heard it, haven't documented it, haven't gotten a chance. But this adverb exists in Hamshen, mani, I come fastly. And then we have himi, meaning lately. So you can see this in example, himi mekal sorvetsak. And for example, so Turkish makes full reduplication, and Hamshen language drives this lexeme formation process from Turkish into Hamshen, into their language. And then we have lastly hekuts, which is a non-reduplicated, but just for an example for adverbs in Hamshen, we have hekuts means tomorrow, meaning as seen in examples such as hekuts ertul, I will go tomorrow. And so this was all of the data that I wanted to show you. I hope you did enjoy it. And I want to briefly summarize about my findings from my data so far. So all in all, it is possible to say that on a sociolinguistic point, the Hamshen language perfectly rhymes two of its parent languages together. Nouns in this language are mostly derived from Armenian, from the data that I've gathered so far, which would make the Armenian parenting language the lexifier language in this situation. But I could not say assert such thing yet. And Turkish or other neighboring derived languages where lexemes also exist in this language, Hamshen. And despite the hardships the Hamshen people has went through, such as banishment or racism, the older lexeme forms in this language is really still tied to its speakers. Speakers still use them in their daily lives, and this language thrives today, and regardless of its history full of oppressions and deportation, which is an amazing thing. As for the lexical insight, which I've brought my own data for you, we see a culture, we still see some sociopolitical and cultural prints, such as in morpheme type, due to religious shifts in the cultural beliefs, and it is reflected in this language's some morpheme types, as we saw in Aspat as well. And except for a situation where culture and belief affecting morpheme type, and lastly, Hamshen language seems to apply word formation process from its can be called metric language, the Turkish. And so this was the data I've brought for you. I hope you enjoyed it. And for my references of speakers, where I've gathered my own data from, I had in total 15 native speakers in my non-prototypical, again, linguistic fieldwork that I conducted. And one of these were my consultant speaker, Aylin Köse. And most of my native speakers were quite old in age and were commonly women. and lastly, for the references of literature, I did gather, so the sociopolitical part, sociolinguistic part that I mentioned in the beginning, in the first part of the first section of this presentation, were actually some kind of paraphrase from the study that I finished last year about this language, from a review of literature. So the one reference of literature that I would recommend if you want to read further about this language would be Akın Gülay's studies, because I really find her work reliable and linguistic and sociolinguistic. So thank you, and that's it.
Thank you so much for this for this presentation. It was so informative, literally so thought-provoking as well, and like we get to learn about this language. Most of us probably, I would say, just heard about this language. I mean, personally, I heard about this language for the first time through you, and I'm really interested about how, like, I've been following with your work since we're classmates. Now, if anyone has questions,
thank you.
If anyone has questions, they can ask through the chat, or they can raise their hands and ask, and that's fine. We are getting a lot of chats. Okay, so Kaan Uluturk, yes, please, you can open your mic and ask your question. Kaan Uluturk, you can open your mic to ask a question since you're raising your hand. Mikrofonunuzu açarak da soru sorabilirsiniz. Şu an bir sıkıntı yok. İlk Kaan Uluturk yaptığı için onun eğer söz almak istiyorsanız elbette yapması daha iyi olur. Yanlışlıkla olduğunu düşünüyorum. Emrah, tam bakayım isminize. Buyurun, sizin sorunuzu alalım.
Sonnur, thank you. This was really good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
okay, thank you. Yeah, great presentation. Right, congratulations. Really solid field work. Right, keep up the good work. And I have quite a few questions. I don't know which one I should ask. All right. First of all, so Hamshen people. Okay. First question: to what extent do Hamshen people use this language in their daily life? Do they speak right regularly, or is it more like code switching or code mixing?
Okay, I think that's a great question. So from what I've seen from my own parents, this language is mostly spoken in households, very strictly in Western provinces where I grow in Yalova. So many Hamshenians migrated to West, to states such as Istanbul, Bursa, Düzce, Yalova, and Bursa maybe. And so in those places, for them, I would say this language is commonly spoken in households more, but it is due to the reason that this community is a bilingual community today in Turkey. They do a lot of code switchings from what I've heard from my own family, and but this language pretty much thrives in those regions. But for Artvin, I would say it's spoken like everywhere. I would say like in the streets of Hopa, when I was walking around the streets of Hopa, I always heard Hamshen spoken in some corner, because there's a really big massive amount of cultural diversity. There are people of lost Turks and a lot of Georgians living in Hopa, in Artvin, but Hamshen is pretty much spoken, I would say. It's just not passed on to newer generations.
I see. All right. One suggestion, you also said that this is also spoken in Rize area, Hemşin, Çamlı Hemşin, right? I don't know how fluent they are, but I'm sure they have most of the words in their lexicon, right? When they speak Turkish, they would sprinkle these words. So you may compare and contrast, right, the language spoken in Hopa and what of the remainder of it in Rize area, and see how similar and how different they are, right? Especially in terms of lexicon.
Yes.
Yes, I am telling you this because my wife is from Rize also, and in her Turkish she would use lots of like Greek words and words from Laz that I would never understand, but mostly at the lexical level, right? I am wondering how expandable this situation is to this language also, right? So in terms of vocabulary and lexicon. And one more thing about
Yes. So
yeah, go ahead. You were gonna say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. So for Rize, I did attend a wedding, a Hamshen wedding, where a last person and Hamshen woman was marrying in Hemşin last summer. So I did go to their village. I saw lots of old people that are ethnically Hamshens, but I did not hear, unfortunately, a single word of Hamshen in there. Unfortunately, and actually in my presentation, the headline photo, the picture in the very beginning where my title was written, the background picture, I took that picture in that wedding in Rize. So those are ethnically Hamshen people that unfortunately no longer speak the language, but it might vary from region to region. In Rize, maybe some amount of lexemes in some regions where Hamshen people live in Rize still might exist from where your wife is from, perhaps. But I personally didn't hear a single word of Hamshen in Rize, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Okay. I have 10 more questions, but I'm gonna ask only one, maybe due to time restrictions.
You can ask all of them.
Okay. Yeah. You talked about irregular morphology. I mean, there was some data, right? Some data about plural morphology, regular and irregular, right? Irregular ones are really interesting, right? We have the same thing in English, right? For instance, in Old English, so we have in modern English, let's say, we have a deer and plural deer. We have a fish plural, right? And we have what's the other one? I thought of one more. Deer, fish,
brother and brethren.
Maybe, yeah. So irregular, right? Irregular, and this is mostly. So in Old English had gender, right? Grammatical gender, and these animal nouns, right? These animals, right? A deer, right? And a fish. They were neutral. And with neutral nouns, you wouldn't use plural morphology. Say they were irregular, and obviously in Hamshen this is not the case. Maybe with some irregular morphology, right, you would think of some grammatical reasons why it is the case, right? You said that there is no gender in at least modern Hamshen, right? Only natural gender there is, you say. But historically, there might have been something, right, that would trigger this. Also, cases with like suppletive cases, right? The first form and the second form is completely different. We have the same thing in English. So we say go and then we say went. We say good, we say better, right? Completely suppletive forms. And I have seen some in your data as well. So that's also very interesting, I think. And one suggestion, one suggestion. You say derive, right? One word derived from this language and that language. But I think what you mean is borrowing, in fact, because when you derive something, when there is derivation, right? When you derive a new word, the meaning of the word changes and the grammatical category of the word usually changes, and it is very costly. But I guess
yes.
What you mean is borrowing, right? Borrowing from one language or another. So
yes.
My suggestion is don't let terminology confuse you. Okay, thank you, Sonnur.
Okay. I thank you.
All right.
This was such a also like thought-provoking chatting. I would say talking to listen to as well. If anyone has more questions, since I mean we don't have limited time, but we want to get to everyone. If Sonnur is comfortable with it, she can type her email address on chat, and people can ask her directly through email as well. If you're comfortable with that, Sonnur.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Sardar, you can.
Yes, I am.
Ask your question, or if you want to say something.
Thank you. First, really thank you, Sonnur, for this inspiring presentation. I also have many questions, but I'll ask most of them privately, if you're okay. But
yeah,
upon Emrah Görgül's words, I will add some things. Yeah, I share the same thoughts, like similar thoughts with him on the like how can I say the terminology? Yeah, I was going to ask what do you mean by borrowing, but I have a complete opposite view on the use of the word borrowing. Since Hamshen, as you explained, I have no previous, I don't have much previous knowledge about this language, but you called Hamshen as a mixed language, right? So it's not historically a unique language. It's a mix between Turkish and Armenian dialects, right? Okay. So we shouldn't use the word borrowing, I guess. We should use derivation in this case.
So I think I did make a confusion within you. So the reason why I used the terminology derivation is because when we follow word roots into etymology, we usually use the term derivated, although it might be inflection as well. So I don't actually know if that's not the right terminology, or if it is, since it's a mixed language. I do want to hear my professor's ideas about this, so I can improve myself as well.
I was just saying, right, terminology is not that much important right now. I guess this is in really early stages. This work is in really early stages, and it will grow, I guess. So don't care too much about terminology, right? It will come in its own way. But I have another really important question, and I'll ask all the other ones differently. So privately, sorry. I have some guesses on how the irregular types of endings occur. So I saw your data. Thank you for providing your data examples also. And we can make our guesses through this. The most
I would like to hear.
Yeah, I'll just share the most interesting ones for us, I guess. Well, you told there's a word which I probably cannot pronounce it right, but Olusha, right? Oğul and Uşak, or Uşak.
Yes.
It follows the same patterns in Turkish dialects, like oğul and oğul, like it lengthens and then it shortens, oğul. And probably they just deleted the u as well, so it became ol. Most of the words you shared has a diachronic background when you look at the Turkish etymologies, just for Turkish words. And the other exceptional words, and you explained that there are probably reasons that these words are like this, yes. And I agree. just like Emrah's thoughts on this matter, for instance, the Hamshen, Yema, and Mariye, like plural version of mother, it's very similar to most of the fusional languages, like most of the Indo-European languages, pluralization or affixation, derivation. So it makes sense, like there's a sense in there. Or it can be like the English verb be, such as don't be, sorry. It was go and went. They depend on different etymological bases. Like their histories are entirely different. There was a past tense of go, but it was deleted some time ago, and they took another word to say it, like went. It can be like that. Like there are probably reasons on there. What are your thoughts on that? My question is like this.
So, Sardar, I think you would really add really much to my knowledge. So I would like to send you my presentation privately, so to hear you more, because I do want to fill as many linguistics gaps about this language before I graduate, and I think you could really help me for identifying how these exceptional morphology exists in this language. So we can, I would ask for your opinions later on as well.
We can get
thank you for mentioning.
You're welcome. Thank you for your presentation and sharing your data examples. Really.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your questions, Sardar. Let's go through the chats while we're waiting for other questions. If anyone, again, has any questions, they can ask through raising their hands by asking Sonnur directly, or they can write it in the chat. In the chat. Yes, please, Emrah Görgülü.
Okay, Sonnur. So you said verb doubling, right? Verb doubling.
Yes.
Yeah. It may not be verb doubling. It would be a light verb construction, right? Light verb construction. I didn't think that those examples were word doubling, but they were close to, similar to, I think, light verb constructions. What is a light verb construction? So in English we say help, but in Turkish we say yardım etmek. Yeah, yardım etmek. So yardım is noun and etmek is the verb, right? So or ödev yapmak, ödev yapmak. So two parts, right? So those word doublings, obviously you need more data, but think about it that way. They could be light verb constructions, right? Very, very hot topic in modern linguistics, right? In theoretical linguistics, light verb constructions. And the last one, you kept saying that, right? Armenian and Turkish are parent languages, right? So that would take your study to a completely different direction, right? For instance, Latin is the parent language for Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, right? Romanish, etc., right? Latin is a true parent language. But in this case, I don't think either Turkish or Armenian would qualify as parent languages. Obviously, Hamshen has taken many words, right? Many lexical items from both Turkish and Armenian, and not just lexical items, not just words, but also grammatical markers, right? Sometimes plural, sometimes past tense, etc., right? I would still put Hamshen. One reason, like Turkish is Altaic, right? And Armenian is Indo-European. Two completely different language families anyway, right? I would still put Hamshen in the Indo-European group, right? Because it has been spoken, like you said, it has been spoken in the Georgian area, in the Caucasian area. So if I were you, I would also go and make a family tree, right? Work on a family tree for the language Hamshen, because when you say parent language, right, it is like English colonizers going to an island, colonizing it, and finding a language there, right? And those two languages, right, they create a pidgin, and then that pidgin becomes a Creole. I don't think this is the case for Hamshen. Okay, so just another food for your thoughts, let's say. Okay, food for your thoughts. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. But I do think that light verbing might be the case. I would actually, to identify that, I would ask my native speakers how they feel about those specific phrases, the examples that I took from them. How do they feel about them? Do they actually feel like double verbing, saying the verb twice? Or do they feel like the two components are really completing each other, like it's not absurd? I would ask my speakers. And for the advice that you said I should make a family tree for this language, I think that would take my study to a much larger case of study than just deciding on parenting languages. So the reason why I called Turkish and Armenian the main two parenting languages for Hamshen is that when we see the language data, not only from my data, but also from some other references that I gave. So Hamshen takes a bigger parts than other languages, both from Turkish and Armenian, regarding both its grammatical functions and lexical items. So that's why I call it Turkish and Armenian parenting languages. And another reason is for the ethnic background of Hamshen people. The native speakers of this language are split in their community as half Armenian and half Turkish ethnically. So half of those speakers of Hamshen fully embrace their Turkish side, while some of the Hamshen say, no, I'm Armenian, while some say, no, I'm Turkish. So there is a dispute even within their community. So about this matter, I would say, instead of making a family tree, which is a much more bigger thing, I think, from a linguist's perspective, that's why I called it parenting languages. So, but thank you for your comment on light constructed verbs. I would take my note on that.
Thank you for the thoughts and the words. I would think, I think maybe in the future, maybe not now, you might make a family tree. I think that would be really, inspiring for other people as well. Now, if we're going to go for the chats, Begum Karakas wrote, "Thank you so much for your presentation. It was so informative." Filiz Çetintaş Yıldırım has written, "Thank you very much for your presentation, Sonnur. I hope your study will inspire other students in their own fieldwork studies. As I mentioned in our lesson before, your study is a very good introduction to document and identify Hamshen language, which is under the threat of becoming extinct. With more data, you can test your previous findings and make your conclusion more precise." We have another question in chat from Durakır. She says, "It was such a fun presentation. I have a question. What are some of the challenges in conducting field work or gathering data on such a vulnerable language?"
Okay, so I do want to speak about my own experience in the field as a third-year linguistics student. So my consultant was Filiz Çetintaş Yıldırım, and she's still my consultant. I'm still evaluating the data that I've gathered in the summer. So for my case, I would say working in the field of a language which was much easier for me personally, because the village is my mother's village. So I'm ethnically connected to those people, although they can't really recognize me since I grew up in Yalova, and I can't really recognize their language, because I've only heard it in my own household, and I did not acquire this language, unfortunately. So, which is simply the reason why I want to study this language, to fill some linguistic gaps with my own linguistic knowledge as much as I can, because I feel guilty about not acquiring this language. So I'm the newer generation that this language, the reason why this language is becoming extinct, because I'm a native, I'm supposed to be a native speaker, but I do not speak it. So, but I do have two older sisters, and they do speak it better than me, but not better than my parents. My parents are both fluent in both Hamshen and Turkish, so they're bilinguals. And so I wasn't really put into hard conditions during the field work, because most of the neighbors I visited to gather data, to talk to them, to interview them, they were like, "Ka sen kimin kızısın? Who are you?" And then, because they didn't recognize me, and then I said, "Hanife'nin kızıyım," and they recognized me that way, because they know my mother, which is their neighbor in their village. So from their childhood, I even met my mother's Nakish teacher back in the village. So people were really welcoming to me in the village, Ardala. So also in Kemal Pasha as well, from my dad's side. So linguistic fieldwork really has its own complications during the gathering of data, such as so some of the native speakers might not want to collaborate with you, because their language and culture, the reason why their language becomes in a state of endangerment is because of the historical events that they have went through. They have been separated within even their community. They were socially isolated, even, maybe. So that's why people are really, how do I say, they're really conscious of endangerments around them. So when you approach them, some of them might not want to collaborate with you, or some of them might want to collaborate with you, but then drop you halfway through. So that is a case in most of my classmates. No, not most of them. Like one of my classmates taking the same class had this situation. So I would say linguistic fieldwork is takes some, takes some. You need to be brave at first, and you need to be objective when you're approaching this language, when you're approaching the people. So for my case, I wouldn't say I really engaged in those hardships during the gathering of data, but thank you for your interest in linguistic fieldwork in general, because I think linguistic fieldwork is like such an amazing part of linguistics in general, because it takes our theoretical education into an applied form. So when you're in the field, you really feeling like you really feel connected with languages that exist culturally and are a heritage of some people. So I do think linguistic fieldwork is a place for linguists where they must invest in more. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your amazing response. Let us continue with reading with the chat. Sardar Sarvet has written, "Thank you a lot. It was wholly informative and insightful." Yağmur Deniz, thank you very much for sharing your amazing work. Aygülçar, Sonnur, thank you for this inspiring presentation. I would also like to mention that Sonnur has dropped her email address on the comments. So if anyone wants to ask or ask more questions to her personally, you can reach out through that email address. Sardar Sarvat has wrote, I just thought Sonnur's given information. Guess that Hemşin is somewhat pardon my pronunciation, Creolized by Turkish influence. There are a lot to decide on this diagnostic state via depending a strong basis, yet morphological patterns make it possible that is grammatically much more similar to Armenian. Do you have any comments on that?
So I do think that would be a big take on this language, that there is grammatical pattern in Hamshen, but I do think that my data is still not enough to make such generalizations about this language. Although I would like to categorize this language into some places in linguistic terms, I would love that for this language to take a place in linguistic world. But personally, I can't really decide on that. Like, I cannot comment on whether if the grammaticality is similar to Armenian or the lexemes, because I have seen both, actually. I have seen pluralization forms, grammatical forms in Turkish roots. I have seen Turkish grammatical structures in Armenian rooted words. So I would say that the best option would be saying that this is a mixed language instead of a Creoleized language, I would say.
Thank you. Sardar says, well, it's too long. I just wrote to add an idea to the previous discussion. Hikmet Akçiçek has said, thank you very much. I do have my own question, which is more of a, I would say, general question. I wrote it down. Were there any surprising or unique lexical items that stood out during your analysis? I want to know that.
That's a great question. So I did include the most interesting one lexeme that I found in my presentation. And I also did present this to my class in non-prototypical linguistic fieldwork with my professor Filiz. And this one lexeme, I think it was Aspats. I think that really Aspats needs to be documented about this language. I truly believe that, because this word has become partly bound in morpheme type, contrasted to its formal previous form in this language. So I do think that some of the lexeme categories in this language are going extinct, and I think that some writers, some Hamshen writers, might want to add this aspats into their dictionaries. So this was really interesting lexical item that I noticed, because I've been hearing this word almost strictly in the phrase kaspaze terçim. Because all of in my household, this phrase was always used, but until this very age, until my study, I haven't noticed this. And when I linguistically evaluated it, I noticed that this component in this phrase actually has a meaning. And when I asked my native speakers and my consultant, Aylin Köse, I noticed that it's actually a word that was replaced by Allah, so with another copy word. So I do think that this was the most interesting finding from my data, but I do wish to find some even more lexemes in this language that has become more bound within time. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for your answer. I mean, if there are any more interesting lexical items like this, I would like to know more. I'm not gonna lie. Normally, in this point of time, I would ask, is there any more questions? But I feel like there are more questions that we have time. So unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. Again, Sonnur has dropped her email in the chat. So if anyone has more questions, everyone can ask through her email personally. I think it's going to be flooded with emails at this point. From me as well, I'm also gonna ask you more. I have more questions. You're gonna hear more from me. You cannot escape. So
I would love that.
Let us close. Dear participants, we would like to sincerely thank Sonnur Karaibrahimoğlu for her informative and thought-provoking presentation on the Hamshen language. I would like to personally thank her again for accepting this okay, that's fine, accepting our invitation and give us this amazing presentation about the Hamshen language. Tonight, we just once seen again how linguistics is not just an academic discipline, but a field that connects deeply with cultural memory, identity, and the sustainability of human heritage. Let us remember, keeping a language alive begin with listening to it. Your presence here tonight shows that you are part of this important awareness. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again at future events. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you for being interested in an endangered language, specifically Hamshen, because this language has been always stayed in the shadows, both linguistically and culturally, under other languages, surrounding neighboring languages in the Black Sea region, such as the Laz. And I think I really sincerely hope that this presentation really took your interest to study, to invest in Hamshen. Doesn't matter, doesn't specifically have to be linguistically, but I do hope that my topic would interest you, because I do want the world to recognize this language more. Thank you.
Thank you again. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming.